names you the name, and the credit goes meaningful and very much needed activity as the revised framework of NAC. I also place on record my high level of appreciation towards this social work school, which is really into social work in the real sense of the term, only because of the dynamic leadership of Padma Shri Lakshman Rao Mane Sahib, who is also our mentor and our guide. Now, under his eminent leadership, this college has obtained laurels in the very first NAC assessment. It was placed at B++ position with a CGPA of 2.76. So I congratulated the college on obtaining B++ in the first ever cycle of NAC. Social work colleges, as we all are aware of the fact, are quite few in number. They didn't have many colleges in front of them to imitate or to learn from them yet. Because of their genuine efforts put in the field of social work, they have obtained a high grade in NAC. Honorable Dr. Shali Joseph, Madam, my good friend, she's also doing a wonderful job over here. And also Bhai Mane, who happens to be the president, a young and dynamic leader in the form of Bhai Mane, is taking the school in the very right direction. So, with these few words of appreciation towards the office bearers of this social work school, I thank Honorable Padma Shri Lakshman Rao Mane Sahib and all his team for giving me this honor and privilege to share my experiences as a NAC assessor and sort of have an interactive session later on. Thank you very much. Now, let us start with the PowerPoint presentation. As you all have heard from Dr. Borate sir, that my college has obtained a CGPA of 3.61 with A+ grade. And this A+ grade happened because of our systematic documentation and presentation. So in each criterion, I would also give certain inputs about what my college did in this particular curricular aspect, so that maybe it will be of use to those who are attempting to go ahead with the assessment process. So these are the presentations. Now, the vision mission which we in the promoting the use of technology and quest for excellence are the 5 core values which are in tune with the purpose of higher education. So over here, I would just like to state one point, and that is our vision, mission, and goals of our own institute, may it be a social work college or whatever the nature of our institute is, should be in tune with these 4 core values, or these 4 core values should be reflected in our vision, mission, objectives, and goal statement. Next, please. Now, as rightly stated by Dr. Sally Joseph as well, this new assessment process is more of ICT enabled because it is now of the 70-30 pattern. In 70, we have those QNM, that is quantitative matrices, and in QNM, we have qualitative matrices. Of the total matrices, 70% of the matrices are quantitative in nature and 30% are qualitative. For the 70%, we have to make our online submissions along with the documentary evidences, and for the 30%, we receive a committee from the NAC. Now, usually, previously, this committee used to visit any institute, educational institute, for 3 days, and if it was a university, it would extend from 6 to 8 days. However, the days of assessment have have been reduced in the new framework, and now the visit extends only to 2 days, and we have 3 eminent people, out of which the chairman is necessarily Honorable Vice Chancellor, the second person is principal of a renowned college, and the third is usually a professor from the university. So this is the composition of the 3 persons, 3 eminent academicians who would visit our institute for assessing us for the 30%. Now, one thing which I would like to share with you over here is, when we say only 30% is assessed on the on-site visit, let us not remain under the impression that the 70% which we have already submitted is done and over. It is not so, because for the 30%, in a way or the other, all the 70% data is connected in one way or the other. So while getting ourselves assessed for the 30%, remaining 30%, qualitative assessment, we need 100% data. So this is the first most important point which would help us to score in a better way. Total data, total documents are necessary. So it is ICT enabled because of the 70-30 pattern. Objective pattern is now implemented. Even if the QLM is to be appeared, it has to be written only in between the range of 300 to 500 words, and transparent and scalable and robust. So from qualitative peer judgment, we have been shifted to quantitative evaluation pattern. So there is increased amount of objectivity and transparency. So what we should learn, or what we should be doing in this context, is we should be very precise, and whatever activities are being conducted in the college in one way or the other, they should be measurable and they should be quantifiable. Only then, on the 70% scale, we will stand in a very good or maybe whatever position. So whatever we do should be quantifiable and measurable. Unless and until we do that, we cannot give a proper, meaningful, quantifiable, quantitative data. Pre-qualifier, 30% of the system is just is score generated. Then 70-30 is this type of system. Benchmarking is adopted over here. And one more thing which we should remember over here is, there is an increased and enhanced participation of students and alumni directly in the assessment process. Previously, the Alumni Association certainly played a prominent role. However, the students were confined only up to students and parents interaction section. But now, over here, the student satisfaction survey plays a very important role in the process of assessment and accreditation. So that is a major change which is brought about, and the participation of the students in the whole process, they are the main stakeholders. So it has been increased by the NAAC. Now, speaking about this assessment is basically a self-evaluation process. Whatever and the manner in which we present ourselves, we will be evaluated. The manner in which we present ourselves, we will be participants. We will be assessed. So it is the whole process. It should be taken as an introspective process. Introspective process, and that would help us to present ourselves in a better way. It is not that they come and ask what they want to. It is always that whatever we have put in front of them, whatever we have given in writing to them, they will come and verify it. So one thing should be made very crystal clear, that we should have a very good clarity about what we have done and what we are writing, because they don't come and ask whatever is not presented or whatever whatever is not submitted by the institute to the NAC Bangalore office, but whatever we have submitted, they come and make an assessment of the very same. Next, please. In this whole process, all the stakeholders are given a very prominent role to play. So we should always be in touch with all the stakeholders, like the students, the most important stakeholder for which we exist. And one more thing which we kept in mind during our own NAC assessment was, NAC is meant for us. We are not meant for NAC. Means we are meant for the students who are getting educated in our colleges. Whatever we do for our students will be assessed by the NAC, and it is never the other way around. Nothing should be done for the sake of fulfilling criteria in the NAC matrices. No, that approach I don't think would take us a long way. Whatever we are doing should be honestly done for the beneficiaries, that is the students, and then NAC will take a very good positive cognizance about what we are doing for the students. Nothing in the higher educational institute should be done merely for the sake of NAC assessment and accreditation. It should basically be done for the most important stakeholder, and that is our students. The next stakeholders are the parents, then the employers, the employees, and the community at large. So all these 5 stakeholders should be taken into consideration whilst we are involving ourselves in the process of imparting higher education to our students. So many a times it is pursued by the community at large that we in the higher educational institute dealing ourselves from the community. So that feeling should not exist. This is the one type of feeling which is sort of felt by a number of people. And the second one is very important, which we took cognizance of in a very serious manner, and that is what the industrial sector or what the employment sector requires is not produced or is not provided by the educational sector. There is a gap between what is needed in the market of the students and what we provide to the students. So this gap is to be wiped out, and that will fetch us very good appreciation and very good gradation in the whole NAC process. So after making these points, let me invite your attention to the 7 very well-known criterions. So these are the 7 criterions on which we are assessed. Next, please. The curricular. The first aspect is the curricular aspect. It won't be an exaggeration if we call it as a pillar of any educational institute. What is to be taught is determined in this criterion, and what to teach is the major task which should be undertaken by any higher educational institute. Now, what we find is there is a gap between what is being taught and what is expected of the students from the society. And in this criterion, what we did at our end is we tried to fill in this gap. And how we did it, in a few minutes, I'll let you know. So, an affiliated or constituent college is principally a teaching unit. It is not majorly the curriculum designing and development unit. This task is basically confined to universities and autonomous colleges. So many a times we feel that we have a very small role in designing and development of the curriculum, but yes, to a certain extent it is true. However, we can certainly play a prominent influential role in the process of design and development in the form of BOS committee members, subcommittee members, or even if we are not a BOS committee members or subcommittee members, as a element of the educational unit, as an academician, we are always free as a college, as an educational institute, to give our inputs to the syllabus framing bodies in order to make our syllabus more employable and more job oriented, skill oriented. And one thing from the view of NAC assessment, we should remember is all the inputs we have given, all the suggestions and recommendations, whatever we have given to the syllabus framing bodies should be documented at our end, because no document, no history. One cannot prove anything unless and until you have an authenticated document about your inputs given to the syllabus designing and developing body. So this is the important input which I would like to share with you, which we had given or which we had done in my own college, which is an autonomous college. Prior to that, it was an affiliated. This is the 4th year of autonomy we are enjoying. Next. Now over here we see that there are 4 key elements and matrices over here. The first one is curriculum design and development, which is related only to the autonomous colleges and universities. Affiliated colleges don't have to respond to this 1.1, so it is into bracket written U. Thereafter, there is one more 1.1 into bracket A, which indicates affiliated colleges. From there onwards, we are supposed to respond to this criterion. So curriculum planning and implementation plays a very, very vital role, because for affiliated colleges, the syllabus is given by the affiliating university, and what major role we are playing as affiliated colleges is planning and implementing the curriculum in a very effective manner. So the way curriculum is carried out, the activities, who, when, how, etc., should be emphasized by the college, and values should be emphasized in a very. Now over here, the documents which are usually expected is an academic calendar, an evaluation calendar, an internal evaluation calendar, and academic calendar may be prepared at various levels. Academic calendar can be prepared at college level at large, then at the level of the department, then at the level of the individual teachers. So certainly at 3 levels we can prepare an academic calendar, and in that way we can plan our academic activities in a very systematic manner, because as it is rightly stated, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. So planning is the first and foremost thing in order to have proper implementation. Planning, see, the words are planning and implementation. It is not implementation and planning. So first of all, we should have a plan, and then we should implement it effectively along with providing all the documentary evidences. Along with that, there are certain things which goes hand in hand with our day-to-day working as a teacher. It might be our attendance, it might be our teacher lecture notes, teacher diary, whatever the name you might have in your college. The teaching diary should be present with the teachers. Then comes the academic flexibility. Mark sir, now in academic flexibility, we should see what type of various programs vertically as well as horizontally we provide. Say for example, we have UG programs, and then after UG, do we have PG as well? And in this way, along with this vertical mobility, we should also have horizontal mobility. Say for example, in my college, it is an exclusive commerce faculty college, but what type of flexibility do we provide to our students? The answer is, we not only provide BCom as a regular BCom degree, but we are also providing Dr. Shali madam, excuse me, I have one important phone call to attend in a minute.
I think all of you can follow the session. I believe that maybe what madam was explaining, it was very clear that we should be very practical. As I told you earlier, the students should be our focus. And another important thing we have to take care is that we have to have interaction with various stakeholders. Actually, that will benefit us in different ways. Okay. One is that it will provide us various resources to strengthen our colleges. Excuse me. And also, many of the times, the interaction with the industries and other agencies will help us to improve the placement rate of our students. Actually, that is the major motive behind any educational institution. Our pass out students should be able to get employment. So, imparting employment skills, that is one of the responsibility of the institute, and that is counted in a very higher level in the accreditation process. Another thing which I want to add is that maybe like medical profession, and maybe in the nursing profession, maybe in social work also, they are into practice. The students are, while studying only, they are into practice. Okay, maybe the social responsibility initiative that we are supposed to take, that maybe we have to develop a culture that whatever our students are learning in our classroom, excuse me, they should be in a position to practice it in the field. So that type of initiative we have to
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Okay, over to you, ma'am.
I apologize to all the audience because I had one unavoidable call to attend. So in case of academic flexibility, there should be both the horizontal as well as vertical flexibility. And now in this case, I was sort of sort of sharing the experience of my college. Ours being a sole commerce college, we did not confine ourselves to only BCom regular degree, but along with BCom regular degree, we impart BCom information technology as a proper degree program. We also at BCom Bank Management as a proper degree program. We offer Bachelor of Vocation as a proper degree program in banking and finance, and BVoc as a proper degree program in accountancy and taxation, along with the BCA as our. So in spite of being a single faculty commerce college, we offer 6 proper degree programs along with MCom regular, MCom bank management, MCom IT, and MPhil in commerce. So these are the 4 PG and research programs which the college organizes. The point which I would like to make over here is we should give enough of horizontal as well as vertical flexibility in case of proper programs. Let us not get confused. The thing I would like to make a little more clear is the confusion which is usually in the minds of many between 1.2 and 1.3. In case of academic flexibility, we tend to tell the number of add-on programs which we have offered in our college, but that particular aspect is related with proper degree programs. And the next one is the place wherein we are expected to give our value-added programs. That is 1.3. So this point may be kept in mind. In 1.3, then you can state about your various short-term courses you may call, or value-added programs one may term them as, or some may call it as career-oriented programs, whatever the name might be, remedial coaching, whatever the name might be, that falls under the category of 1.3, which is subtitled as curriculum enrichment. In order to enrich the existing syllabus, what all do we do? That is what we mean by value-added courses. Now, in case of our college, what we did is we have 14 such courses, value-added courses, and the uniqueness of my college is we don't offer these courses at random to the students. When they come to the college, we offer them one-to-one counseling in order to know their interests in the field which they are willing to pursue their job or employment later on. And accordingly, out of the 14 add-on courses, we ask them to select one. Now, how do we impart these 14 programs? We impart these courses in a 3-tier manner, sir. In the first year, when the particular program of banking is say provided, it is given in the form of a certificate course. So even if the boy pursues that program for his first degree year, it is in the form of certificate. The same program is to be carried forward by that child in the second year in the form of diploma, and in the third year in the form of advanced diploma. So though we are not giving dual degree in the actual sense of the term, but we are giving something which is very, very close to the dual degree, and that is why our placement ratio, sir, is around 90%, which is much higher than many of the professional colleges. Because while identifying and while imparting these value-added programs, we have had MOUs with the concerned concerned industrial or service sector who will be employing our students, and the curriculum of those is strictly skill oriented and job oriented. There is nothing theoretical in that, because the theory is covered in our proper degree programs, and that is why the employment rate of my college is quite satisfactory, above average, and that is why I'm happy to place on record that my college has been awarded the best college with placement award by our institute, and in the top ranking national list of autonomous colleges, my college stands 59. So it is also a noteworthy achievement. Now in feedback, now curriculum, after curriculum enrichment, let us go to the feedback system. In feedback over here, one point I would like to share with you is this feedback should never be general. This feedback should be necessarily focusing on the curriculum and curriculum only, because it falls under the category criterion 1, curricular aspect. A general feedback is something else. In this criterion related to 1.4 feedback system, it should be confined only to the curriculum which we are imparting, be it a degree program or add-on courses, whatever it might be. It should be related to the curriculum of our college. Next. Now, teaching, learning, and evaluation, 350 points, the most important, and this is our bread and butter. If we say that this criterion is our bread and butter, it won't be an exaggeration, because we are meant for teaching, learning, and evaluation. So this plays a very crucial and major role in the life of any teacher. So over here, how effective our teaching, learning is to students from different backgrounds. So if you have to have an edge over the others, we should be having a variety of teaching, learning methods which would serve a heterogeneous group. Now, one thing which we usually find in most of the educational institutes, that is higher educational institute, is we don't usually have a homogeneous crowd. The student community is usually heterogeneous in different manners. So we should first of all bifurcate the students, maybe on the basis of their learning abilities, maybe on the basis of which generation learners they are, maybe on the basis of the environment in which they are being brought up, maybe on the basis of the availability of transportation available. There are a number of things on the basis of which we can bifurcate students and provide teaching, learning to them, which would be the most suitable to them. And then comes the interactive instructional technique. The teaching should never be chalk and talk, one-sided. It has to be participative learning. Now, in this particular pandemic situation, we cannot but have a blended learning approach. So those who will be going for the NAAC assessment in the near future, we will have to adopt a blended learning option. And in blended learning option, we can have 3 types of teaching learning. First would be obviously online, then comes self-learning, and then physical learning. When these 3 are combined in a proper manner, in an appropriate manner based on the locality and the needs of our location, we can provide effective teaching. Next, please. So these are the key indicators. students enrollment and profile, and then comes the student catering to students diversity. In order to cater to students diversity, we have to diversify students in a proper and systematic manner initially. Only then we will be able to cater to them in an effective manner. If the diagnosis of the disease is not done, medication will not help. So the diagnosis, the diagnostic part should be done in a very meticulous and mechanized proper manner. Only then things will work out in an effective way. So that is very important. Then comes the teaching learning process. Now we all always say that we know what is teaching, we know this process, we are into it. No, over here the learner centered education plays a major role. Learner centered again gets its relationship with the diversity. If a student is a slow learner and if we ask him to join the group of advanced learners and teach in a pace in which only advanced learner can understand, the purpose of teaching learning will not be served. So over here, the teaching should be relevant for the learning group, and that is of great importance. Then teachers' profile and quality also plays a major role. The teacher should keep on updating himself, herself. They should keep abreast of the latest knowledge. Only then, and research, of course, only then they can become effective teachers. If we stop learning, we should stop teaching as well. It was said by a very eminent scholar that if a teacher stops learning, let them even stop teaching, because they don't have anything new and anything latest relevant to teach. So what I would like to focus over here is that teacher should always be in a learning mode. All the time he should be a learner, and in the NAAC assessment process, in teacher's profile and quality, how many faculty development, quality enhancement, latest learning techniques the teacher has obtained would play an impactful role over here. Now in evaluation process, one thing I would like to bring to your valuable notice, and that is the semester end examination is carried out as per the evaluation timetable given to us by the affiliating university. But over here, the internal evaluation plays a very important role, and that internal evaluation sort of prepares the student for the semester ending examination. So in case of internal evaluation, it should be a continuous comprehensive process, continuous comprehensive evaluation. Only then the student will fare well in the semester end examination. And then comes the student's capabilities on successful completion of a course or a program. The dropout rate over here should be as minimum as possible. Otherwise, we would come into difficulty. Next, please. Third one is related to research and innovation. Over here, research projects and facilities provided by the institute in order to encourage faculty as well as student research and research culture ambience of the college in whole proves and plays an eminent role. One more point which should be considered by all the researchers, be it teachers or students, and that point is how relevant my research is for social upliftment, for nation building, for nation development. Research done for the sake of just producing a few papers will not serve the purpose. How my research made impactful change in the lives of the or to the lives of human beings would fetch very good results. So that should be kept in mind while conducting research. Now over here we have 3.7. The first one is promotion of research and facilities. It is meant for universities and autonomous colleges. But the second one is resource mobilization for research. Now over here, one part which we can play is trying to tap certain corporates or the industrial units who have CSR with them. CSR is Corporate Social Responsibility Fund, and that fund is to the tune of 2% of their total what we can call turnover. So that is a big amount, and if we convince those corporates or industrial units that our research will be meaningful for developing a new product, for bringing in innovation, for the betterment of life, they can certainly spare that amount, or they can also sponsor certain college level researchers research projects, so that also can be taken into consideration. Previously, consultancy was meant for affiliated colleges, but taking into cognizance the limitations of affiliated colleges, now it is left for universities and autonomous colleges. Now comes extension activities. One point which I would like to make a focus on over here is, in case of extension activities, many people, many respondents get sort of confused between outreach programs and extension activities. In case of extension activities, what is actually expected is, how is your subject knowledge made useful for the society at large? Say, for example, my subject being economics, how is economics made useful for the community at large? Now, what did we do at our end? What we did is, we adopted a village, and then we conducted an economic survey of the village, and then we shared our findings with the village Gram Panchayat in order to see to it that our findings would be of help for the policy makers for the betterment of the village. So that can be one example of extension activity. Second, maybe say what soil testing. In case of geography, you can offer soil testing as your extension activity for the nearby villages. Say, for example, botany may be a subject which we can consider, and then organic farming, providing valuable guidance on organic farming can be the extension activity of Department of Botany. So extension activity basically is the activity in which we extend our subject knowledge for the betterment of the society. And in case of outreach program, those are programs which are conducted for the betterment of the society. They are irrespective of what subject you belong to. Say, for example, AIDS awareness program, tree plantation, Swachhata Abhiyan, all these come under outreach program. I think I have made myself clear, and collaborative activities also should be conducted. Now comes fourth, infrastructure and learning resource. Now over here, I would like to sort of focus on one point. Many a times people have one curiosity in their mind, and that is, our college is not very big. Our campus is not very big. We have inadequate infrastructure. Now over here, whatever points they are making may be valid. We don't intend to deny anybody's point, because they are speaking from their own end with their own experiences at hand. But what we should be focusing in this particular point is, whatever existing facilities we have, may it be physical infrastructure, financial facilities, or human resource, how optimally we put it to use is what is taken into consideration. Say, for example, there is a classroom, and if it is run only in one shift and the others are facing lack of space, that cannot be called optimum utilization. Best maximum possible use of the available infrastructure is what is expected. Then the second point which I would like to share with you is, whether it is not a matter of whether your college is very big or very small, but whether it is capable of sufficing the number of students which you have enrolled. Say, for example, there are only 300 students in the college. Maybe 8 to 10 rooms should be sufficient for an arts commerce college. It is not necessary to have 25 classrooms. Do you get my point? So it all depends on the sufficiency of the infrastructure for the available students, and that is how we should be able to relate our infrastructure with optimum utilization and sufficiency. Now, physical facilities, whether they are adequate. Library is the major part in this particular criterion, and necessarily library should be fully automated in order to make best possible use of the existing resources, so that can be used not only during the physical working hours of the library, but also by giving logins to the faculty members and the users. This library can be used round the clock, and that is what is expected. IT infrastructure should be deployed and should be utilized in the proper manner, and maintenance should also be taken cognizance of, and usually annual maintenance contract, if it is done by the colleges, AMC, it is a more systematic way to sort of show how we are maintaining our infrastructure, be it IT, be it physical, or whatever the nature of the infrastructure is. Fifth one is student support and progression. Now, everything is for the students. I am very satisfied to share with you that in this criterion, my college scored 100% marks, 4 out of 4. 4 per criterion, if we take it as maximum on the 4-point scale, we scored all the 4 marks, because we did all the necessary things in a very effective manner. Say right from the beginning, what we did at our end is how all these 7 criterions help the student community. That is how we sort of looked at this particular criterion, that is student support and progression. Now, in student support, guidance cell, placement cell, grievance redressal cell, welfare measures, then certain value added courses, bridge courses, remedial courses, scholarship, free ships, number of things can be done in order to support the students to remain in the mainstream of higher education, and not only to remain in the mainstream of higher education, but also be encouraged to obtain progression to higher education, go into the higher education field. So we also have one unique program known as Earn and Learn. We are the pioneers of Earn and Learn scheme. Those who are downtrodden and from the socially disadvantaged group, 25 students are adopted by our college, and we provide parental care to all these 25 students. Food, clothing, shelter, studies, everything is taken care of by the college itself, and the students don't have to bear even a single rupee on their side, and this was highly appreciated. I am also very satisfied to share with you that number of students from this scheme are now today serving as chartered accountants in various units. And one more thing I would like to share is, in the district of Satara, where we are placed, 100% chartered accountants are our college alumni. So this is also a very satisfying thing. So this is how we support students, and then we see to it that these students progress to higher education. And then here, mentoring the students certainly plays a very crucial role, because encouragement to the students at this particular time plays a very crucial role for the students. Now, students' participation and activities. What we did is, right from criterion 1 to criterion 7, whatever criterions are present with us, and wherever it is possible to include student community, we have included the present student community. Say in curriculum, in teaching learning, what do they need? In research, we have provided facilities for research, conducting research by the students, and so on and so forth. alumni. We should always have a very good rapport with the alumni. It goes unsaid because these people are of great help because they have a different type of attachment to the alma mater. And if we stay in touch with them, only will they stay in touch with us. So we should be approaching at their doorsteps initially, and then they will come wholeheartedly to the college. So see to it that the alumni association is registered, is strengthened, and we have rapport with the alumni association at regular intervals. Next. Sixth criterion, governance leadership. Now, over here, governance leadership plays a very, very important role, and we are lucky enough to have a very strong governance in the form of the Rayat Shikshan Samstha. Now, over here, I would like to invite your attention to the strategic development and deployment. Institutional vision and leadership of all the educational institutes is usually seen to be very strong and sound. But where we fall short is during the strategy and planning phase. Now, what is strategy? Strategy is the answer to why. Why we are doing what we are doing. The answer to that, in simple words, is the strategy adopted by the. There is plan. Plan is the answer to the question how. First comes the strategy, is a broader term, and below strategy comes a plan. Strategy answers our curiosity to why we are doing what we are doing, and that should be related to the 5 not core values as well as the mission, vision, and goal of our own educational institute. And then the plan is something which would answer our how question, that is implementation part. So that is how we should be going about in this particular case. In case of this pandemic COVID situation, now one thing should certainly be inevitable in our strategy, and that is online or distance education policy. We cannot do without that, and therefore I would request everybody to see to it that in our strategy includes this distance or online education, teaching, learning, evaluation plan, because we cannot function without this online or distance education in this pandemic situation. Also, financial faculty empowerment strategies also play a very important role. How we upgrade and how we develop professional competencies in our staff, both faculty as well as the administrative staff also should be considered, because governance is related to both academic as well as the administrative part of our process. So both should be considered over here, and that should be done. Also financial management and resource mobilization, and then comes the internal quality assurance cell, which plays a very, very vital role in order to see to it that the strategy, plan, and the empowerment policies are placed in the right place. Next, please. Now comes the 7th, institutional values and practices. Over here, we should have a very responsive mechanism to certain pressing issues like gender equity, environmental consciousness and sustainability, inclusiveness and professional ethics. Now our pressing issue is also of psychological stability because of this pandemic situation. So all these would be included in the 7th criterion, and we should be proactive for all this. The reactive measures are needed, but they are not appreciated to the expected extent. Always proactive measures are appreciated, and then it plays an impact in the grading point. So we should be very proactive to all these things. Next, please. So institutional values and social responsibilities. As far as my experience goes, all the institutions have very high values, and they are certainly dedicated towards the betterment of the society. Try to encourage it even more. And then best practices should be the practices which are not conducted only for that particular year, but that which are run for a period of at least 3 years. Only then we can term them as practices. Otherwise, it would be a merely activity. So that should also be kept in mind. So institutional distinctiveness is also very much essential. Where our educational institute lies, the locational advantages and disadvantages should be thought of while putting forward our institutional distinctiveness, and that would help the institute. So this is all what I had to share. Now, Dr. Joseph, madam, if you permit, may we have question answer sessions? Instead of just one-sided delivery of...
Yes, madam, we will go for question answer session.
If there are any questions, shall we sort of address them now?
I request Sampada madam and Samadha madam to look into that.
Maybe for the next 15 to 20 minutes, we can address a few curiosities or suggestions, whatever the nature of your input might be.
Samadha madam?
Dear participants, if at all you are having any questions, please type it in chat box, or maybe you can raise your hands. We will unmute you and you can have a direct talk with the madam. Dear participants, if you have any question, any query, please ask. Either you type in the chat box or raise your hands. We will see to it that you will be unmuted and you can have a talk with the madam. Pratibha madam, one question is there from Mohan Joshi. In higher education, in professional course, students of high merit are admitted. Is it necessary to have slow outreach activities?
A very good question, very meaningful question. High merit students are admitted to professional courses, which is true. But maybe if you don't bifurcate the students on the basis of their merit, if all sail in the same boat, maybe their psychological attributes might be different. There might be diversity on some other fronts that can be thought about. And accordingly, you can sort of train them, because everybody need not come from the same background or environment. There will certainly be certain students who are maybe the first generation learners. So they have a certain type of complex in their mind maybe, and which they don't open out in public. Maybe you can explore those areas. May not be merit, maybe you can explore those areas and try to support those students on that front, and maybe that would be of great benefit to the students. Dr. Joshi? Hello.
Madam, another question. What is Innovation Center?
Oh, Innovation Center is a center in which you bring in ideas. You invite ideas from the students or whatever stakeholders you permit to access the center which you have developed. You bring in the ideas. Then there is a panel of experts over there who sort of help the people who have brought in the ideas to convert it into a service or product, which can be put to commercial use. That is sort of the idea of an innovative center. Yes.
Madam, one more question from Megha Mudholkar. Is it mandatory to have IQAC for first cycle?
Yes, it is always better. It is not mandatory, but without a quality assurance body, how can a sort of unit prove that they are having or undertaking quality measures? To my mind, though it is not mandatory, one should and must have IQAC. Yes, IQAC is necessary. There's one question, Madam. Can you comment on green campus or environmental audit? Also, water conservation measures little challenging in urban colleges. Yes, green campus, green audit should be done. Water conservation measures. There are challenges in the urban areas, but in cities like Bangalore also, if we visit, Madam, now due to time constraint, we won't be able to explain it in detail. However, if you give visits to your nearby urban colleges who have fared well in this NAC assessment and then done well, you can get an idea of how water conservation is done in a very meaningful manner. I have visited certain colleges, and in a given area also, they do it very well.
मैडम स्वाति वोरा जी पूछ रही है इंक्यूबेशन सेल includes in which criteria?
It would fall under research, sir. Research.
Any specific rules for College of Architecture? They are affiliated?
Professional affiliated colleges. I have not gone through for affiliated colleges. I'll have to check. I cannot make a comment on that right now.
Now, Robin Joseph sir is asking about what kind of activities in regard to commerce innovation.
Yes.
Lab is,
Yes. Very, very relevant question related to my college as well. Now, over here in the innovation labs, we can bring in ideas, especially e-commerce, e-marketing. There are a number of things selling on Amazons and things like that. We have provided the seed money. We have provided students with the raw material, and they are doing online marketing, e-marketing, e-commerce. These are the things we can have on the innovation labs. There are a number of things. Tax consultation can be provided. Tax consultation. Now, GST is a very happening issue. People are unaware about GST. What are the different rates for different items? All this can be provided in the form of counseling.
Madam, one more question from Subramanyam, Dr. Okay. Subramanyam. He is asking, please define best practices with regard to NAC assessment.
Okay. Now, best practices are the practices which are helpful to the students at large, because higher educational institutes, what is the purpose of higher educational institutes? To run or for betterment of the students. So best practices are those practices which would help the students to achieve their best in life. Say, for example, in case of my college, Earn and Learn scheme becomes the best practice of my college, because the meritorious downtrodden students who do not have access to learning, we provide them with the necessary support, and that is how they can come up in life. That can be called as a best practice. Or maybe in case of a science college, there are usually CIII Center for Innovation, Incubation and Invention. This is also a best practice of a college, wherein many small colleges in the nearby area can avail the facilities of this CIII centers. So these can be the best practices. It all depends on what type of location you are in and what would be the best for your students. Accordingly, you can identify your best practice and do that way. Yes.
Vijaya Lakshmi, one participant here, raised the hand. Okay. Just unmute yourself and you can ask the question. Vijaya Lakshmi.
Yes, madam. 3 participants have raised their hands. Let us take up their points.
Dr. Dr. Mukim, are you there, Dr. Mukim?
Madam, somebody is asking about academic audit.
Okay, academic audit is very, very essential. Academic audit format is usually divided, is usually prepared by the affiliating universities. In academic, that is AAA, academic and administrative audit. Now, in this audit, a yearly assessment is done on the lines of the NAAC criterion, and it helps in keeping the documentation and the records of the college in place, as well as it also gives a direction to the activities of the college. IQAC over here should play a very crucial role in conducting the administrative and academic audit every year. I would suggest that yearly academic and administrative audit should be conducted by all the higher educational institutes. The IQAC should play a very crucial role in that, and they should certainly take the help and guidance of their affiliating university in while framing the questionnaire or while adopting any particular system of AAA. कोणी बोलतंय का? Anybody trying to ask?
There is one more question. Whether certificate course in college level is considered by NAAC?
Yes, it is. It is. Yes, it is.
Ma'am, one more question.
Yes, sir.
Difference between extension activity and outreach activity.
What is it? Difference?
Extension activities and outreach activities.
Difference they want?
Difference they want.
Okay, okay, very fine. I invited your attention to that. In outreach programs need not be subject specific. They are generally meant for the betterment of the society at large, and usually the conduct several programs that can come under the caption of outreach programs, whereas extension programs should necessarily be subject specific, like how you extend your subject knowledge for the betterment of the society, not the students, for the betterment of the society, and that can become our extension program. Did I make myself clear? Do you want me to give certain examples, which I've already done in my presentation? So that's the difference between outreach program and extension program. They are not one and the same. Had it been that they were one and the same, twice it wouldn't have been asked, isn't it? Because they are different, you have to respond differently, and the meaning is different. Did I make my clear?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. One more question. Whether 12B, recognition under 12B, is necessary for NAAC?
No, no. Anybody can go voluntarily. No, it's not necessary. Not necessary. Anybody can get themselves assessed and accredited by the NAAC.
Is there any other question, participants?
There's somebody who's asking, are value-added courses related to subject or general? There can be two types. Generic subjects like moral and ethical values, these type of generic topics can also be there in the value added courses, as well as subject specific, like in case of certain accountancy paper, you can always have an additional GST add-on course, or in case of geography, some additional skill oriented course can be undertaken. So these value added courses can be conducted at two levels, generic level and subject specific level. We have both types, generic as well as subject specific. What are the examples of activities for promotion of universal values and ethics? Now, good things never change, and good things do not change anywhere in the world. Say, for example, positive thinking, respect towards one another. Maybe Sally Madam can elaborate on that. Universal values and ethics. Over to Sally Madam. She being from the social work. Madam, it's a very fine question.
Actually, universal values and ethics that should be in the mind of the teachers while dealing with the students. And maybe, for example, you say about equality. It is a universal value. So that equality may be gender equality. So in our activities, in our day-to-day affairs, we have to reflect that. Okay. Similarly, maybe humanity, we have to that humanitarian principles we have to practice in our college, and same thing we have to transfer it to our students. So maybe in the community activities also we can promote the students to give awareness on this. That way we can promote this universal values and ethics.
Thank you, madam. Now somebody is asking whether feedback from students is necessary. It is inevitable. Unless and until we take feedback from the students, we really don't know what they are expecting, because many a times, madam, sir, whoever is asking, they are not very much vocal about their intentions, views, or many a times at the spur of moment, students are unable to sort of express themselves. So when we take feedback, we give them certain time, space, and in their comfort zone when they write, they really give us their good, what we can call feedback in order to improve our mechanism or sort of supplement our mechanism. So the question was, is feedback essential? I would say not only essential, it is very essential. We must take feedback from the students. Whether student satisfaction survey need to be done manually or digitally, and do we consider all the students or few? Okay, Joseph sir, a student satisfaction survey at your level for practice purpose, if you are doing, the system which we had adopted is, we sort of trained the students on this particular, because my college students come from the rural areas. They were unaware of these types of surveys. So we conducted a manual survey initially in the classroom, and then we encouraged them to do it digitally, and then they did it very well. And we conducted it on a very large scale, but it is done only on 10% by the NAC, the first 10% responses, and it is finalized. But we never know who the first 10% would be, Professor Robbins sir. So we should sort of keep everybody ready. So that's it. Ajun काय प्रश्न आहेत? Please guide how we can strengthen alumni. Okay. Alumni, you should be in touch with the alumni. When do we call an alumni association as a strong association? When they meet, when they come to the college regularly, when they are registered, when they give their inputs in the form of developing the curriculum, in the form of developing the study material, in the form of maybe giving expert lectures, guest lectures, maybe in the form of, if they are associated with certain industrial units, developing MOUs. We can name a number of activities with the help of which we can strengthen our alumni. But the base point is, we should be in we should have a very good rapport with our alumni. So only then they'll involve in number of activities.
Preeti Talwar, madam, please unmute yourself. You have raised the hand. Chiranjit sir, please unmute yourself. You can ask.
Hello, ma'am. So said about in criterion 7 about the gender equity. So can you explain shortly gender equity?
Whom are you asking, to me or Joseph madam?
Hello, respected Pratibha ma'am.
Okay. Sir, in case of gender equity, what we can have is, we don't treat girls in an inferior manner. The admissions are given, girls are encouraged to come. Even in recruitment policy, gender is considered while recruiting ladies. So for that is how we consider gender equity. Cultural representation to the students on various college committees. If there is a, if you intend to take 4 students, you can take 3 girls and 1 boy. In that case, gender equity is Joseph, madam.
Of course, recruitment and maybe enrollment of the student, that is also a matter. And also, while conducting the activities and program, also you should see that the women, maybe male and female students, both will be represented. And maybe the fair treatment to be given, there should not be any unequal treatment to anybody at the employee level as well as the students level. And so they can maybe transfer this value to their families and society around, and when they get a job also they will practice it. So it is important to inculcate these values in our institution.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Thank you. Preeti madam. Preeti madam. Preeti madam, please unmute
Yes,
yourself.
yes, sir.
Okay, ma'am, you can ask your question.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, for a wonderful lecture. Ma'am, I have a question on certain extension activities, outreach activities like engaging with slum students, teaching. So large part of our students do these teaching and engaging with slum kids, but there is no regular body which invites or gives us appreciation letter for them. So how do we show it in the, in the NAC framework? So what I want to say by this is certain activities we cannot quantify in the way NAC needs it. So how do we answer that?
So during the on-site visit, there are certain activities which cannot really quantifiable to a very large extent. So when the NAC peer team visits your college, madam, you can take them to the slum areas where you have imparted education, right, to the students. That is one thing. And secondly, you can always have it published in the newspapers. You can keep some photographs. You can keep some before and after pictures, what you have imparted, what type of students went over there. All these proves to be a document, because you're doing it, you can prove it to the NAC. It shouldn't be a problem, madam.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
ma'am.
Thank you, madam.
Athi Lakshmi madam.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Ma'am, our college is not yet aggregated yet, so this time we are planning to go. And regarding the IQAC team, as suggested, NAC is insisting to form a IQAC team before we suppose going for the accreditation. So do we need to have the members as suggested by the NAC, like all the stakeholders representation? Is it necessary now, or after the accreditation we can form the exact?
Madam, when was your college established? What is the establishment year of your college?
2015.
2015. Fine. 5 years of standing you have. So what I would suggest is you should have the IQAC as per the composition given by NAC, because you have 3 years have passed by, so you have alumni as well. So
Yes.
it would be better to have the NAC as it is. You are forming a committee, so why not as per the composition given by NAC? That would fetch you better results. Not only results, but that would serve the purpose of IQAC, madam.
Okay.
Yeah, that would serve the purpose, because alumni are invited, present students are invited, and then industrialists, they play a very major role in sort of suggesting certain courses which make the students employable, which enhances their employability. I think it should be done as per the composition given by NAC, since you have 5 years of standing. That would be my suggestion, madam.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Vijay Mane sir. Vijay Mane sir, please unmute yourself. Vijay sir. Subramanyam sir, you want to ask something?
शेवटचा क्वेश्चन घेऊया का सर आपण आता?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, last question. Madam, last question. How much time does it take to get ready for NAC application? It is from Shilpa Sharma.
Everybody is concerned with that, how long it will take. It all depends on how organized your working is in your organization. See, if you fall in the category of organized people, it shouldn't take you more than 1 year, as per my knowledge goes. But if you have done the activities but not maintained a record, then I cannot tell. You can have my personal number and then I will discuss how long it will take.
Okay, ma'am. So now, before going to wind up this conference, I feel that if any participants want to share any view in regard to this e-conference about the resource person, the content or whatever, if anyone want to share anything, please raise your hand. I will unmute him. He can share his views. A small feedback. Anybody? Professor Abhishek.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Good afternoon, sir. Yeah, my voice is audible to you.
Yeah, yes, sir. Very good afternoon.
Yes, sir. I'm from Jharkhand. I'm a assistant professor in Kejriwal Institute of Management and Development Studies, Ranchi. Yes, sir. I have attended this session. It was very much meaningful and as well as useful for us. I think in future also you should conduct such seminars, webinar, and I would also like to have a focus regarding the way you all have presented. But there were some topics on which we need to elaborate it regarding NAC upgradation and all that. So that can be later on, it can be discussed in much detail so that it could be more fruitful for us, because there are many rules and regulations and notifications which we are not means aware of that facts. So in that season, in that way, it is very much useful for us. I would like to add once again, it was a wonderful webinar and it could enhance my knowledge as well as it will be helpful for the students for their upcoming future also in the scenario of COVID-19.
We will really work on it, and thank you for your feedback, sir.
Okay, sir.
As suggested, the upcoming event I have posted on the WhatsApp group. Day after tomorrow, on 10th July, we have launched one again e-conference on outcome-based education, new dimension for the students' education. Yeah. So please join it. And now we will go for concluding this conference. I request my colleague, Dr. Pankaj Das, to please offer vote of thanks. Pankaj, over to you. Pankaj, please unmute yourself. Pankaj, please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yeah,
am I audible?
You're audible.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am. Pratibha ma'am, good afternoon. I was going through chat box and I was looking at the response of participants. It is wonderful. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Dr. Pratibha Gaikwad madam for sharing her wisdom and enlightening the participants with her fine sense of wisdom. It was really very beneficial. Particularly, I was just going through the presentation which you have shared. I think we need to study more. And one thing I picked up that good things never change. So I think that's the thing. We are here to continuously improvise ourselves and deliver good to students. I am thankful to Shali Madam, in charge principal of our institute, and Professor Jeevan Borate, IQAC coordinator, plus management of our institute, as well as all the participants for participating in this webinar. And I think you will take something good from this session. Thank you so much.